Okay, good afternoon. Sorry for the delay. I hope it hasn't put people out too much. And then I postponed because I had to drop my daughter at the airport. She's traveling. Then we arrived at the airport and we realized that we didn't have her passport. So I had to wait for my son to bring the passport in an Uber. So now I thought I'd be home or back in my office to teach. So I'm sitting at the airport and we're going to teach from here. I guess Hashem had it in his plan that we should be learning Torah at the Cape Town international departures or national departures, whatever it is. Okay, so it's great to have you in. Some of the regulars I see aren't here, so I hope that they probably couldn't make it this time, so I'll have to apologize. But the recording will be available for those who miss it. Okay, Nazirut, the laws of the Nazir, which we know follows on from the general laws of oaths. It's a particular type of oath. And we're up to chapter 5. And what we're going to do is we're going to go just quickly in the first halakha is going to revise the 3 main areas that a Nazir kind of puts restriction on himself. And we're gonna talk that out a little bit, exactly how this all works. So halakha 1. There are 3 matters that are forbidden to a Nazirite. One is ritual impurity. They can't come into contact with a human corpse. The second is they're not allowed to shave their hair. And the third is they're not allowed to take, they're not allowed to partake of products of the vine. This applies both to the fruit or the waste product of the fruit. And we'll speak this out shortly. Alcoholic beverages made from dates, figs, or the like are permitted to a Nazirite. Now, so although the Hebrew word is sheikhar, which often just simply translates as beer and is a broad term for alcoholic beverage, is not what is prohibited to the Nazir. It's specifically grape-based alcohol. So he says not just wine, but the sheikhar forbidden to a Nazir by the Torah is an alcoholic beverage made from a mixture of wine or a derivative of grapes. The second halacha, what is meant by the products of the grapevine? So he's going to give us what the measurement of eating is in order for the Nazir to have been considered to transgress and be liable for the punishment. So when a Nazir eats an olive-sized portion of the fruit of the vine, meaning fresh grapes, or raisins, meaning that they dried out, or even unripened grapes, or he eats an olive-sized portion of the waste product of the fruit. What's the waste product? Either the peels or the seed. So for all of this, if there's warning and he eats the correct amount, he'd be liable for lashes. Obviously, even a small amount, he's still not allowed to eat because it's a biblical prohibition, but he would only be punished if he actually ate the full olive-sized. What about for drinking? Because you're not allowed to drink wine or other grape-based alcohol. Similarly, if he drank a revi'it of wine or ate an olive-sized portion of coagulated wine, this is considered as fruit. Or if he drank a revi'it of vinegar, this is wine vinegar, which is a waste product of the fruit, he's also liable for lashes. So when it comes to, these are halachic phrases, there's slightly different exactly how to translate what exactly an olive size is in current terminology and what exactly a revi'it is in current terminology. For now, we'll just stick to the halachic terms. So in order for him to be liable for eating, it must be a kazayit. And in order for him to be liable for drinking, it must be a revi'it. What's not included? Grape leaves, the tender shoots of the branches of the vine, or the grape sap and grape buds are permitted to a Nazirite. For they are not the fruit, nor are they the waste product of the fruit, but they are considered to be part of the tree. And that's not included in the prohibition or what he is not allowed to eat. So I see it. Okay. All forbidden grape products can be combined together to produce a minimum measure for which one is liable for lashes. Right, so we said you have to eat an olive-sized kazayit. What does that mean? One who mixed together fresh grapes with raisins or with unripened grapes, pits and peels, and ate an olive-sized portion of the mixture is liable for lashes. In other words, it doesn't have to be a grape size of either of them. Even if he eats that amount of these products combined, it's a full transgression, liable for the punishment. Similarly, if he ate them one after the other, you don't have to put it all in your mouth at once, but he ate them one after the other until he ate an olive-sized portion of the entire group, he's liable for lashes. Similarly, he is liable for lashes if he drank a revi'it of a mixture of wine and vinegar. In other words, it doesn't have to be a complete reviat of either wine or grape vinegar, even if they're combined, it combines to the total amount for the transgression. Halacha 4. A permitted substance is not included together with a forbidden substance to produce them in a measure for which a Nazirite is liable for lashes. What does that mean? He says if you mixed wine, that's the forbidden substance for the Nazirite, but he mixes it together with honey. So now together, that mixture is a kazayit. And he says it must have the flavor of wine. He'll emphasize this soon as well. It's entirely, sorry. So it is mixed together with honey, in which the flavor of wine could be tasted in its entirety, and a Nazir drank the mixture. So in that instance, if there was less than a reviat of the actual wine, it would not combine to make him liable. Similarly, if he has raisins pressed together with dried figs into one mixture, and the flavor of the raisins could be tasted in its entirety, and Nazir ate the entire mixture, he's not liable for lashes unless there would be at least an olive-sized portion of grape product in the entire mixture, the size of 3 eggs, as is the law with regard to other prohibitions that are forbidden universally, as we explained in Hilchat Machalat Asur. What he's referring to here is that there had to be the physical amount of the forbidden product, and you had to be able to have eaten the entirety of that mixture in the time that it takes you to eat 3 eggs. Because remember, we said previously that if he eats it one after the other in a row, it also combines. But it has to be within, as we'll see in a moment, he'll say what's called kedei achilat pras, which is also within a certain defined time frame. Because if you ate less than a kazayit, and then 10 minutes later you ate another little piece, and another 10 minutes later you ate another little piece, then they don't combine. Of course, again, a Nazir is not allowed to eat it at all, but he just wouldn't be liable for having transgressed the complete thing if he does eat it. So it has to have the full amount. These are really the principles, and we'll see it's going to be emphasized in each of the laws going ahead, that it has to have the full amount, and it has to be eaten within that time frame, and the so-called kosher product that is there with it does not combine for that amount. You have to have the full amount of that which is prohibited, either the grapes or the grape products that are prohibited, or the wine or the vinegar that is prohibited. Similarly, if a person soaked his bread in wine, and there was a reviat of wine within kedei achilat pras, so within the bread there was a reviat of wine, and he ate it within that amount of time, then he will have consumed the reviat of wine, and hence he is worthy of lashes. But if it was less, then it wouldn't be a problem. Concerning this in similar situations, the Torah states, anything that has been steeped in grape wine shall not partake. In other words, it's a specific wording in the pasuk that says v'chol mishras anavim. This forbids an entity in which wine has been mixed, and its flavor is the flavor of wine. This, again, we mentioned this before, and he's re-emphasizing it. Yeah, it must taste like wine. This applies provided that it has both the flavor and substance of wine, as is the case in regard to other prohibited foods. But if it looks like bread, tastes like bread, even if there's wine in it, it would not be a problem. As we see in Halacha 6, if wine or the like were mixed together with honey and the flavor of wine cannot be detected, it is permitted for the Nazir to partake of the mixture. The Nazir prohibition should not be considered more severe than those against fat and blood. In other words, the concept, basically, when it comes to forbidden foods, something that we maybe not all familiar with in detail, but we're all familiar with this idea that one food can get nullified in another if there's no taste of it. And there's different ratios, works for different foods. But that's the point. He's saying the prohibition of the Nazir, which is essentially a permitted product, it's something that he's made prohibited to himself, shouldn't be more strict than other laws of what we call ma'achalot asurat, forbidden foods. And therefore, if it doesn't have the taste of wine, there wouldn't be a problem. Halacha 7. If the mixture had the flavor of wine, but there's not a reviat of wine within kedei achilat pras, the mixture is prohibited according to rabbinic decree. As we explained in Hilchot Machalat Asurat, if a Nazirite partakes of it, he is given, he's lashed for rebellious conduct, but it's not a biblical prohibition. In other words, as we said previously, technically, biblically, the point is over here, that you have to have the amount in the mixture that is prohibited, and you have to have the possibility of eating that amount within the given time in order for it to be forbidden biblically. When we're talking about here as a scenario, let's say there's a reviat of wine in an entire loaf of bread, and it's impossible to eat that loaf of bread in what we call kedei achilat pras. So biblically, it's impossible to transgress. But because it's an entity that has enough wine in there that is forbidden to you, it's rabbinically prohibited. And a Nazir who partakes of that would get lashes, but only of a rabbinic nature. Halacha 8. when a Nazir eats an olive-sized portion of grapes, an olive-sized portion of grape seeds, an olive-sized portion of grape peels, an olive-sized portion of raisins, and drinks an olive-sized portion of wine, even if he squeezed a cluster of grapes and drank that juice, I mean, this is just a further point he's emphasizing. It doesn't have to have fermented yet to become alcoholic. Even grape juice is problematic. So what happened here? In this case, he's transgressed 5 separate transgressions, and he gets 5 separate sets of lashes. For each of the substances is forbidden by a different prohibition, and receives a 6th set of lashes. This is interesting, and we've got to come back to it every time when a Nazir transgresses. He gets a 6th set of lashes for violating the general prohibition of lo yachel devaro, which is they should not desecrate your words. That is the basis of the prohibition against the person going against a vow that he makes. Because remember, the Nazir is a vow, but it's a particular vow. So every time a Nazir transgresses his Nazirite vow, there's an automatic double prohibition. And the point of this halacha is that even though grapes, grape products, and everything we said earlier can combine to make one kazayit, but if he ate a separate portion of each of these, he would be transgressing each time. Similarly, if he ate an olive-sized portion of peels or an olive-sized portion of grapes, he receives 2 sets of lashes, one for the peels and one for the grapes, and he is given an additional set of lashes for the prohibition that he should not desecrate his word. This law also applies to his Nazir who shaves his hair or becomes impure. He receives 2 sets of lashes, one because of the violation of the particular prohibition, one because of the prohibition that applies to all vows that he should not desecrate his words. And we'll see in a moment that for the other 2 prohibitions, it's not exactly the same as eating, where we said for each different product that he eats, a kazayisov, he'll get a lashes. With drinking and with ritual impurity, we'll see it's slightly different. The point he's making in this halacha is simply that for any Nazirite transgression, you also are transgressing your general oath prohibition, and therefore you would be liable for 2 sets of lashes. Again, as with all punishments, there would have to have been warning, there have to have been witnesses, and so on, but that is the full transgression. Halacha 9, when Nazir drinks a revi'at of wine and a revi'at of vinegar, he receives only 1 set of lashes. He is not liable for wine and for the vinegar independently. And the reason is because the Torah doesn't say do not drink wine and do not drink vinegar. Right? Before it did say, with regard to food, it says don't eat the fruit and the stuff that comes from fruit and so on. Each one is mentioned independently, and therefore anybody eats a gazayat of each would be liable. When it comes to the drink, all it says from is he shall abstain from wine or alcoholic beverages. He shall not drink vinegar of wine or vinegar of alcoholic beverages, meaning he should not drink wine or a beverage in which wine was mixed. That's the meaning of alcoholic beverages. And then it goes on, even if they became vinegar. That's what the pasuk means. Because it's not a different type of product. It's just something that was a wine product that's kind of gone sour. It's now vinegar. Since the Torah repeated only the term vinegar, which is one term, he does not receive lashes for both of them independently. The Torah doesn't express it as a separate transgression prohibition. It just mentions it once as kind of defining another component of the wine product. Halacha 10, when a Nazirite is drinking wine for the entire day, okay, so it means he started drinking in the morning, kept drinking, even though he's liable in God's eye, because as we said, you're not allowed to drink. A Nazir is taken an oath, he's not allowed to drink wine. But, so for every revi'at he's transgressing, but he only received 2 sets of lashes, right? One for the drinking, one for desecrating his vow, as we've explained. If he was given, but if he drank 1 cup of wine, and then he was given a warning, or he was given a warning with the first one, and then each time witnesses gave him a warning, then he would be liable. According to rabbinic decree, it's forbidden for a Nazir to abide amidst the gathering of people drinking wine. He shouldn't hang out in a wine bar. He should separate himself from them because they present to hurt off him. He's putting himself into harm's way, right? He's asking to be tempted. And our sages said, do not come close even to the area around the vineyard. You don't want to put yourself in temptation's way. When a Nazir cuts off 1 hair, okay, so now we're going to the other prohibition, which is about cutting hair. So if a Nazir cuts 1 hair, whether using a razor or scissor, he is liable for lashes, provided he cuts it from its root as a razor would. What it really means is, we'll see in a moment, he's going to define how short it has to be. So whether it's with a razor, or whether it's with a scissor, if it's short enough, even 1 hair, if he intentionally cuts it off, it's a transgression of his Nazirite vow. Similarly, if he pulls out a hair by hand, he's liable for lashes. Both the Nazirite whose hair is cut and the person who cuts his hair are liable, because the verse says a razor will not pass over his head. It doesn't say that he shall not pass over his head. then you could understand that if somebody else did it, it wouldn't be a problem. But it says the razor, in other words, that which is going to cut the hair shouldn't pass over his head. Even if he left enough hair so that it could be bent, if he left enough hair so that it could be bent over from its tip to touch its root, he does not receive lashes. So if there's enough, if the length of hair is enough that it's, as he says, you can fold it over that it will touch back down, that's not considered cutting. Again, it's something he's not to do, but it's not something that he would get lashes for, because cutting in this manner is not equivalent to shaving it with a razor. If a person applied potion that removed hair to his head, and in this way removed his hair, then he's not liable for lashes. That's not the biblical transgression. He is, however, nullifying the observance of the positive command, as it states, he shall let the mane of the hair of his head grow. In other words, it's not something he's allowed to do, but it's not the specific transgression of the vow, and he would therefore not get lashes. Halacha 13. When a Nazir shaves his entire head, he is liable for only one set of lashes for the shaving, right? Like if he was drinking wine the whole day. But if he was given a warning concerning each hair, in other words, he says, I'm cutting. Somebody says, whoa, just remember you took a vow, you know, do it. Then he says, no, I'm cutting, and he does again. So then for each warning, he would be liable for not shaving, and he would get lashes for each one. Now, in order for him to be liable, he has to do the action intention to be destroying his hair. So this is what the next halacha tells us. When the Nazir is scrubbing his hair with his hands or scraping his scalp with his nails, so you scratch your head or you're washing your hair, his intention is not to pull out hair, but there are times that hair will come out and times that hair won't come out. Because his intent is not to remove hair, and it's possible that he will not remove any hair, he's not liable. He should not ever comb his hair with a comb or scrape his head with earth, for these activities will certainly remove hair. If he does so, he's not liable for lashes. In other words, there's three categories. There's the intention of moving hair in a way that you know it's going to be removed. There's doing something not with the intention of removing hair, but you are going to remove the hair. That you're not allowed to do, but you don't get lashes for. And then there's the first one, which is you're fully liable for when you intend and you do cut. Sorry, I said that wrong. When you intend and you cut, fully liable. When you don't intend and it's possible that it won't fall out, you can do that, no problem. When you don't intend, but it's definitely going to fall out, that you're not allowed to do, but you wouldn't get lashes. Okay, I hope I'm said that clear now. Halacha 15. When a Nazir becomes impure through contact with a human corpse, this is now the third category of what the Nazir is vow includes. So if he came into contact with a human corpse in a manner that would require him to remain impure for 7 days, he's liable for lashes. This applies with regard to ritual impurity for which he is required to shave, as will be explained. In the not next chapter, in chapter 7, we're going to go through details of exactly what type of contact will make him impure for a corpse. There are specifics about that, but if he does, if the way in which he comes into contact with the corpse fulfills all the necessary criteria, he's impure for 7 days, he has to cut his hair, and for ritual impurity for which he is not required to shave, and for those type of ritual impurities he's not required to shave, but will cause him to be impure, in each of those cases, he would get lashes for that because he's transgressing the vow. Halacha 16, when a Nazir becomes impure through contact with a human corpse many times, even though in Hashem's eyes he is liable for lashes for each time, the court holds him liable only for one set of lashes. If he was given a warning, same as the other transgressions each time, and he nevertheless became impure, he's liable for lashes for every time he became impure. But when does that apply? When he became impure and then returned and touched, carried, or stood over the corpse. If he was touching a corpse, and while the corpse was still in his hand, he touched another corpse, then he's only liable for one, even though he was warned for each time not to touch, for his state of purity has already been desecrated. Basically, what the previous halacha is saying is like this: a person becomes impure for 7 days, even though it's within the 7 days that he's touching another corpse. So it would seem that he's in a state of impurity. Why should he then get another transgression? We say you do if you got a warning. However, if he's still in contact with the source of first impurity, even though he's touching another source of impurity, and even though he's being warned not to, so long as he is in contact with the original source of impurity, he doesn't get another transgression rolled on top of that. Halacha 18, when a Nazir enters a home and remains there until a person dies, or he enters a shelter in which a corpse is located while he is in a closed container, chest or closet, and a colleague came and opened the top of the chest with his consent, he's liable for 2 sets of lashes. This is a very interesting law. So again, he walked into a house, he knew there was someone there that was on their way out, and then the person died. He says he's going to get 2 sets of lashes. Or he walked into a house where he knew there was a Nazir, but he came in prepared. It's possible that you can wear a box around you so you're not in contact with the dead, but then somebody uncovered that box and he agreed to it. So this is what's interesting. You now transgress two prohibitions. Why? Because the verse says lo yavo, you shall not approach the corpse, and then it says lo yatama, you shall not become impure. So in this instance, he's liable for both of those. Now, what's interesting is if he enters into a house in an ordinary manner, he becomes ritually impure. His becoming ritually impure precedes his entry. Why? For from the time that his nose or his toes enter, he already becomes ritually impure, and he does not become liable for entering the shelter until his entire body enters. In other words, it's specifically in a situation where he goes into a building, and then the source of impurity with his knowledge affects him while he's there, that he's liable twice. Because if you walked into a room where there's already a corpse, right, the laws of Tumah, that if you under the same cover, you would become impure. If you're walking into a room where the corpse is already there, as soon as a part of his body, even the smallest part of his body, enters into that room, he's already tameh. That means when he fulfills the concern of walking in the room, he's already tameh. And therefore, he's not liable twice. He's only liable for becoming tameh, not for the vayavo coming in. Halacha 19, when a Nazir enters a shelter where a corpse is located or a cemetery unintentionally. So he walked in a place, he didn't know there was a corpse. And after he discovers this fact, somebody tells him, well, watch out, there's a dead body there. Or, oh, by the way, that area that you just walked into is a cemetery. So, but he did not jump up and leave, but instead remained there. He is liable for lashes. This applies provided he remains there for the time it takes to prostrate oneself like a ritually impure person who enters the temple. In other words, if he gets out quickly, he hasn't transgressed. But if he dallies around, then he is transgressing because he didn't go in intentionally, but now he knows about it. Don't dally around. Halacha 20, and we're coming towards the end of the chapter. The following rule applies when one causes a Nazirite to contract ritual impurity. So somebody picks up a Nazir, let's say, and puts him into a room where there's a dead body. So if the Nazirite acted intentionally, he says, okay, the guy says, I'm picking you up, I'm taking you into that room. And he says, fine, pick me up, take me into the room, even though they both know that there's a corpse there. So if the Nazirite acted intentionally, then the Nazirite is liable for lashes, and the person who caused him to contract impurity violates the prohibition against placing a stumbling block in front of the blind. Right? But if the Nazirite was not aware of the transgression, and the person who caused him to contract impurity acted intentionally, neither of them are liable for lashes. Because why is the person who caused the Nazirite to contract impurity not liable for lashes? So he says, because the verse that speaks about the Nazir becoming impure says, if he defiles his Nazirite head. That means only if he knows what he's doing is going to make him impure. Then the person that assists him also transgresses with him, so to speak. But if he doesn't know, persons are liable if he willfully causes his own self. A person is only liable, right? If he willfully causes his own self to incur impurity. But if he's not aware of that, then he wouldn't be impure, and the person that caused him also wouldn't have that transgression. The final halacha, and here he just gives a kind of in summation how many transgressions a Nazir can possibly transgress in one act. So when a Nazirite who is in a state of ritual purity makes himself ritually impure, so he's also liable for lashes because for violating the prohibition, do not delay in paying it out. Why? Because, right, if a Nazir takes an oath, let's say he didn't specify it's for 30 days, then he becomes impure, what happens? He has to start over. But if he's starting over, that means he's remaining in that state for longer than necessary. And the pasuk says, "Lo ta'acher l'shamo," he should not delay in paying it. So as soon as he becomes impure, there's already two transgressions. For he delayed the fulfillment of his Nazirite vow in impurity and performed the deed. Similarly, if he took a Nazirite vow while in the cemetery, so he's standing in the cemetery and saying, I'm going to do Nazir, but immediately he's going to become impure, right? So that means he's delaying when he's going to end the Nazirite period, and therefore he transgresses this verse, do not delay in paying it. So from this we learn that Nazirite who made himself impure could receive up to 4 sets of lashes, right? Because of the prohibition, he shall not become impure. Because of the prohibition, he shall not desecrate his word. And then because of the prohibition, do not delay in paying it out. And the final one, because of the prohibition, which says, lo yavo, he shall not approach. If he entered and incurred ritual impurity at the same time, as we explained above, where he went into the room first, and then the source of impurity was imposed on him. So there's a possibility for a Nazirite who comes in contact with the dead to actually transgress 4 things at once. Okay, that brings us to the end of the chapter. A little bit unusual settings. I'm glad you guys all made it.